This past week, I went to the shoe repair place that I've been frequenting for 21 years. I used to enjoy a certain degree of anonymity when I went in there. But a couple of years ago, the proprietor of the shoe repair shop recognized me. I walked in and he said, "Aren't you Pastor Fleming?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I read your column every month in News for You." Wow. He said, "I like what you have to say." I said, "Well, thank you." Well, anonymity is now gone. So I walked in this week and he said, "Pastor Fleming." And he greeted me and he said, "What are you preaching on Sunday?" And I said, "Well, oddly enough, it's the story of Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law." And then to see if I could shock him a little, I said, "And I thought Jesus and Peter were friends." And he immediately responded, "Yeah, but don't forget, Peter denied him 3 times. In Mark's gospel, when we begin reading, Jesus is already an adult. There's no birth story. We meet him at the River Jordan when he's being baptized. Then there's about one sentence that says he went out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. That's about all it says. Then all of a sudden he's back in Galilee. And he's calling Peter, Andrew, James, and John to be disciples. And then he's preaching in the synagogue. And a man with a demonic spirit comes in, and Jesus casts that spirit out. And after that, they go across the street to Peter's house where his mother-in-law is ill, and Jesus restores her to health. It is not by accident that Mark puts those stories together at the beginning of his gospel. Now, you don't have to raise your hand if this is true for you. Have any of you ever seen the Happy Painter guy on television, Bob Ross? Oh, yeah. Yeah. My favorite one is when he's painting and there's a meme that says, "Let's put a happy little Bigfoot right over here." When Bob Ross starts painting, he uses a 2-inch brush like you would use in your house, and he just starts putting colors on. Big, broad strokes. Some blue up here for sky, some blue down here for water. Well, that's kind of the way Mark's starting this gospel. He's painting with broad strokes. He'll get into the details later. Make a happy little mountain and a happy little tree. That'll come. But right now, he's just painting with broad strokes. And he's given us 3. Calling disciples, confronting evil, healing the broken. For Mark, this is the heart of what proclaiming the kingdom of God is all about. Calling disciples to faithful living. Confronting evil in whatever form it may be found. Healing the broken. That was Jesus' mission. And by implication, it is our mission too. As individual Christians and as the church, we are called to call forth people to a new way of life. To confront evil in body, mind, spirit, even in the body politic. And we are called to meet the brokenness of the world with the healing wholeness of the gospel of Jesus Christ. A couple of weeks back, when you thought I was playing hooky, I was really in church. We were over in Dayton, Ohio. We went to Westminster Presbyterian Church, lovingly known in our family as the scene of the crime, where Wendy and I were married 27 years ago. And by a great moment of grace, providence, call it what you will, I was reacquainted with an old friend of mine who was the guest preacher that day. His name is Roger Nishioka. Roger was for many years the person who brought the Presbyterian youth ministry into its fullness. He then went off and did a PhD and went down to Columbia Seminary in Decatur, Georgia, and taught there for a while. Now he's out at Prairie Village Church out in Kansas, one of our largest churches. He's the executive associate pastor there for adult education. And Roger told this amazing story. And I was so glad that my kids and my nieces and my nephew were there to hear it too. He told the story of this young couple who had moved to Iowa from New Jersey. And shortly after arriving in Iowa, the woman of the couple was diagnosed with an aggressive breast cancer. When she went to the hospital during the intake time, they said, "And what church do you go to?" Well, they had visited the Presbyterian church once there in their town, but they had been Presbyterians in New Jersey. They're almost as dense as Pittsburgh Presbyterians in New Jersey. That's not a mental or intellectual comment. Just per capita, we got a lot of Presbyterians in that part of the world. So the pastor of that church was called. He went immediately to the hospital and saw them and prayed with them. And the next day during surgery, he spent the whole day with the husband. And then after they got home, there was a knock that came to the door. And the woman went, and there was a woman holding a casserole. And she said, "I'm from the church, and this is for you." Okay. She took it and went back inside. The next day, in the afternoon, knock at the door. And a lady came in and she said, "I brought you some dinner tonight." And she said to her, "Let's sit down and talk for just a minute." And they did. And she could see that this young woman was getting tired, and so she said to her, "You know, I don't mean to intrude, but it looks like you could do with a little dusting and cleaning up around here, and I love to do that. Why don't you go up and take a nap, and I'll tidy up a bit?" She did. The next afternoon, she goes to the door. There's a man standing there with a chicken. It was cooked. And the man said, "Now, you got to promise me that you won't over-reheat this because it will ruin it. And my wife would hate that, and I'd be in trouble." And the woman said, "Well, thank you very much." He said, "You know, I notice your screen door doesn't work very well. And I like to fix stuff. Would you mind if I worked on your door for a couple of minutes?" She said, "No, that'd be great." When her husband came home that night, he opened the door, and it opened easily. He said, "What happened to the door?" She said, "A guy from the church fixed it." She said, "What church?" He said, "The Presbyterian church." This went on for 3 months. A predominantly old church, mostly elderly folk, took care of this young couple. They have no intention of moving back to New Jersey, Roger says. They've found their community, and they're staying put. Sometimes the gospel requires words, but very often, actions still speak louder than words. Call people to a new life. Confront evil where you find it. And bring wholeness and healing wherever brokenness may be. For now and evermore. Amen.